Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. This job can be hard, and it definitely takes a toll. You know, the bells hit at 3 a.m., the coffee tastes like regret, and we just shrug it off and get on with it. We've called that the job for so long, we've stopped asking what it's really doing to our bodies, and we all kind of have that underlying, I think we all have it, feeling that I'm not sure if this is net positive, what it's doing to our bodies, our heads, and our families. Today, we're going to put some of that data on the kitchen table and call it what it is. My guest is Dr. Daniel Higuera, a human performance coach, researcher, and associate professor at Santa Ana College in California. He holds a PhD in human and sports performance from Rocky Mountain University, and he's built his entire career pretty much studying the intersections between physiology, psychology, and operational performance in the fire service. Dan's not an armchair academic. He actually works hands-on with over 2,000 firefighters every year across 25 departments, running full physiological assessments from VO2 max, heart rate variability, sleep, recovery, strength, and mental health indicators. He's published and presented nationally on everything from body composition and fitness trends in tactical athletes to age-related readiness to the relationship between core volume, sleep loss, and post-traumatic stress. His work has appeared in International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health and the Tactical Strength and Conditioning Report. The new research that he's currently working on, peer review on the links between cardiovascular fitness, core volume, and mental health outcomes for firefighters. We talk about loads today. The culture of just suck it up and the race to the bottom badge of honor over who slept the least, who was busiest during the nights. The kind of golden handcuffs that keep people grinding into their 50s and beyond. The unicorn 63-year-olds who still operate as machines, and why banking on being a unicorn really is not much of a plan for any of us. We get into why VO2 max is more than just a beep test number, how it links to resilience, injury reduction, and recovery between calls. We also separate strength you can use from strength that gets you hurt. We get honest about things like mobility, not just the Instagram kind, the kind you can lunge for your kid without something popping, that kind. Dan's passion sits right at the intersection of physiological health and operational performance, where recovery, readiness, and ethics of technology all collide. He's not just crunching data, he's using it to help departments build smarter wellness programs, design better testing, and create policies that don't just extend careers, but actually improve the quality of life while you're still in that career. We also shine a bit of a light where it gets dark, that anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, why it's rising to the surface now, and why it's actually always been there. We just maybe weren't as aware of it. It wasn't so obvious to us. And then we point our thumbs instead of our fingers, which is a rare thing for some of us. Practical things inside your control, napping without guilt, training smarter, not just heavier, food that travels with a busy rig, wearables, and actually something that you wear on your wrist that can tell you something useful rather than just the next Gucci toy. And getting our bloods done, so you're not guessing about hormones, lipids, or glucose. So, for leaders listening, we hit low-cost, high-return decisions that protect people and budgets, because replacing broken firefighters is a very expensive policy, even if that's not something that hits you morally. And for everyone else, still in the thick of it, Dan's message is simple. Evidence beats ego. There's no pride in burnout, only in longevity. This is not a scare story. Hopefully, it's a bit of a roadmap, definitely one that I needed. So breathe, listen in, and let's build a career that you can survive and a life you can enjoy on purpose. As an aside for this episode, it was recorded back in July. Putting it out now, I was really poorly during that period of time. Ironically, a variety of reasons that connect to what we're talking about today. So if you notice a little bit of a difference in my voice during the episode, it's because I was quite poorly. So you might hear that one. Don't worry, there's nothing wrong with whatever device you're playing it out of. It's just me being a poorly boy. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to this conversation with my good friend, Dr. Daniel Higuera. I'll see you on the other side. How long ago was Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep? That's an old book now, isn't it?
I'm gonna
You familiar
say
with it?
10, 15 years old now, but
I
I
probably should
don't
have
think it
Googled
has
it
lost
before.
any relevance though.
That's what I'm saying. I'll probably have to Google it in a minute. I think it's quite old, but I always think like the fire service and even the first responder service sector is always lagging at least 1 decade behind. I mean, before we started recording today, we were talking about the detrimental effect. There's been so many studies done on sleep deprivation. That's why we use it as a punishment in prisons and in a torture method and all that sort of stuff. Why do you think it's taken so long for it to embed itself in the first responder sector, and more so for organizations, not just individuals, to be able to adapt for this?
Ooh, I can give you a response in multiple directions here. Um, I will I will try to answer it from all directions that I get. One, from a research perspective. We've known that sleep deprivation has a long list of negative effects on the individual. That's to your point. That's why they use it as punishment for prisons, etc. But now this is something that the firefighter puts up with for a 30-year career. And because the research world hasn't really highlighted this until like maybe the past 2 decades or decade and a half, now it's starting to become on the forefront of it. Because you guys, as a firefighter, you guys have known that shit, last night was terrible for sleep. But that's where the conversation ends. It starts and stops at the kitchen table. And that's it. Once you go and you're in front of your battalion chief or you're in front of your family, you have to be a father, you have to be a husband, you have to be a firefighter. And you being tired from sleep deprivation, everyone shrugs their shoulders, says, suck it up, you got a job to do. So that's where the conversation would start and end historically. And then as research started coming out maybe 10, 15 years ago, we, as more of a broader population, started noticing, like, oh shit, doing this for 30 years has had a long list of negative effects on the firefighter. But then what now? The data is published. Now we give this report over to the individual firefighter or to the battalion chief or to the fire chief, and they say, "So what? What do we do?" And that's where the conversation ends there. But then you have your other group of firefighters that say, "Hey, we're all going through it. Suck it up. You'll go home tomorrow and you'll get some rest in."
Do you
So
not think
that's
as well, though,
usually
that
where it's
the
at.
age range is continually expanding as well? Because in the US, I mean, I think it used to be a mandatory, mandatory was like 57, I think. I think the volleys come out at 50 years or with like 20 years of experience. But in the UK, we're raising that age group because obviously people are living a little bit longer now. We didn't really work the pension thing out to anticipate people dying a lot older. So we're asking people to work till they're 60, 65. 60. So I know you're saying 30 or 20-year career or whatever, but I'm thinking like I joined when I was 18. So if I work until I'm 65, that's going to be 47 years. I don't, I'm optimistic. I look after myself. I read the books and stuff like that. But I still think the mathing, even for people that are diligently trying to do this, I feel like we're setting ourselves up to fail.
So now you introduce another layer on there. One is just the sleep deprivation, when it has the influence we have on physiology and psychology. Now you put in a retirement age in there. So here in Southern California, when I started working with fire, there was something called a classic member when it came to the retirement system, where these individuals can retire at a 3% multiplier at 50. So they called it 3 at 50. And then it went to 2.7 at 55, I think, or 53. And then now, currently, anybody hired after the year 2013, what they call PEPRA members, I forgot what the acronym stands for. Now it's 2.7 at 57. So that your multiplier now, your constant is 2.7 for a 30-year career. So now you do some quick math, and the firefighter realizes, like, oh shit, I may not be able to retire as soon as I would like to retire, but I've been doing this already for 20 something years. My body doesn't recover the same way when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, but I have kids in college, but I still have a mortgage, but I
Got
still
the
have all
golden
these other
handcuffs at that
obligations.
point. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, well, I'm going to stay here until I'm 60, 62. And us at the wellness program that we run, we work with roughly about 2,000 firefighters per year. So it's like 20 to 25 different fire departments. Out of all those members, I can count how many members we have that are up above the age of 60. Now, of those individuals, I can think of one for sure. This guy is an anomaly. He's a maverick because
He's a
he's
unicorn.
fit.
He's just yeah, exactly.
He's fit, he's strong, he has cardio, he has the mindset for it. He says, I'm gonna die in this position. He's 63, I think now. I think he just got his 40-year badge. Um, but nonetheless, that is not the norm because then we look at the other ones who are into their mid 50s, late 50s, and sure, they're still good up here, like they're still sharp, but now they're still waking up one, two, three times after midnight. Now they're still working 48, 72-hour shifts regularly. And all that is going to have a toll on the body. So the rate of injury, the rate of disease, the rate of the decline of mental health, like all these are really, we're going to notice how this is going to compound as these members who are pepper members, who are they're forced now, I guess, forced to retire later, we're going to start seeing the effects of that in 15, 20, 25 years.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Godiva Limited. Godiva is one of the world's leading providers of specialist equipment for emergency services market. Godiva produces a comprehensive range of fire pumps, including vehicle-mounted, portable, and their cutting-edge integrated total water flow control system, SAMFlows. I've been using Godiva my entire career as a reliable pump on the fire ground. It is such a crucial element of a successful firefighting team that you want to empower your crews with the very best, reliable, quality product. Reach out to our partners by checking the notes in the podcast. Now back to the show. You know, when you say that they're still firing and the synapses are still there and stuff like that, is that a little bit of survivor bias? Because like I moved out of an operational, I mean, I'm still operational, but I don't work on a station at the moment. I moved into a role in our training department. And then I went on to a role in our like fire investigation, operational planning department. So I'm working days. So I come off shift for a year or two. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I immediately noticed a cognitive shift. So I feel like, you know, I used to speak to clients when I used to train people about like just general hydration as a silly example. You probably don't know what it feels like to be well hydrated because you probably never have been. Like, and that's not like a slight on them, but until you've really diligently gone after it for 5 or 6 days, same with sleep, until you've got into a really good pattern, I never knew how much more sort of mental bandwidth was available to me, especially when I'm doing things like a podcast. I've been doing this for like 6 years now, and I feel the difference. I feel that cognitive fog when I have done a night shift covering somewhere versus when I've been in that regular sleep pattern. So I know you say like, I mean, what's our level of everything's still firing? You mean what they're not senile, they haven't got dementia, you know, like that. So there's an element of surviving the fire service and what level you come out at. You know what I'm saying? Just because people aren't dying, although many are, and we'll talk about those. I was looking on your socials earlier, those top sort of 5 risk elements. There feels like a slight abuse relationship where there's like, well, it's not that bad. Yeah, but you probably never know how well you could feel. You know, I know that's a meandering long question. Do you know what I'm trying to say though? Someone such as yourself who works with a range of people, you know, I feel like there's a big element that people don't know what good should feel like.
Oof. Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there.
Sorry, that's my ADHD goes in 27 directions and there's always 6 questions wrapped up in a ball of rambling sometimes.
All right, let's see if I can start piecing this together. From a perspective of you don't know what good really feels like, let's just tackle it from a sleep perspective. So for the firefighter who's been on for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, they have a baseline level of fatigue that they're used to operating at. And anything above that is a win for them. So I would regularly survey the firefighters and ask them, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? And I don't specify whether it's fragmented sleep or not. And an answer I would get consistently is if I can get more than 4.5, 5 hours of sleep on duty, it's a win for me. And then I add the layer of, well, how much of those 5 hours was consistent? and they go, well, I can get an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour stretch before something wakes me up. Maybe it's a tones, maybe it's footsteps, maybe it's the toilet flushing, whatever it may be. So now you take your average human being and put them on 5 hours of sleep for 30 years. What does that do to them? Sure, they're going to adapt and they're going to have their new baseline level of fatigue that they're okay with. But then when they go on vacation for 14 days, 2 weeks, and they're back to this 7, 8, maybe 9 hours of sleep regular for 14 days, they feel refreshed. They come back and they said, holy shit, this is what it feels like to feel well rested. So, from what we know is when we are chronically sleep deprived, and sleep deprivation is defined by anything less than 6 hours. So you ask the everyday firefighter, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm chronically sleep deprived. I never get 6 hours regularly."
Mm,
And you, we look at what the research does for sleep deprivation, chronic sleep deprivation, and it has a huge impact on mental health, a big impact on cardiovascular disease, impact on cancer, impact on athletic performance, for cognitive performance. The list it just continues to go on. So at the age or the rate that I'm going to age at, someone who gets 7 to 9 hours of consistent sleep is going to be much, much slower than the rate that a firefighter is going to age at for those reasons that we just discussed. So this is that baseline level of fatigue that they're okay with operating with. Can there something be done about that? That becomes a whole different conversation from there.
when we talk about sleep recovery and people like, we were talking about wearable technology. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole yet, although we can tiptoe into it. People say, "Oh, I need to catch up on sleep." My limited interpretation is once you've lost it, it's gone. I mean, I'm a big one for napping, but like, how much can you really restore the damage that's done when you think about your telomeres or your general health and well-being markers? My limited interpretation is once you've missed those windows, you've missed them because when you say like 5 to 6 hours, we go in sort of 90-minute sleep cycles if I'm stretching back into my brain from some of the sleep books. And I find it's the interruption of those natural sleep cycles that's the real issue. Have you seen, do you know what NASA nap is? Have you read that data bit?
Say it again.
NASA, NASA nap, space program.
You'd have to remind me.
So if I said to you, Dan, when does a sleep become a nap? How long? Oh, sorry, when does a nap become a sleep? Like how much? What was your time frame if you said I'm going to have a nap?
Anything under 90 minutes.
Anything under 90 minutes. Okay. And then after that, it becomes a sleep. Supposedly, in the NASA studies, and I had a look at it again this afternoon because I always find it interesting, 28 minutes is the nap cycle that they advise people to take, which I think fits nicely into our lunch breaks. I always eat for half an hour and then I try and sleep for half an hour, but it feels good for me. But some people, I mean, I think firefighters survive on naps. We just have to try and grab it where we can. But I wonder if is that something we should be encouraging or not? I mean, what's your kind of thought process on it?
In short, yes.
Okay.
So if we try to digest this whole thing, start breaking it down into pieces. So we have different stages of sleep. And before I go down any deeper, I am not the expert sleep doctor. I would revert
No,
over
no, no. Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Matthew Walkers of the world. But nonetheless, is we have 4 to 5 different sleep stages depending on which organization you talk to. And as we cycle through all these sleep stages, they start getting longer and longer and longer. So to cycle through all four, let's say for the sake of argument, all 4 sleep stages, they go N1, N2, N3, N4. The first 3 are non-REM sleep stages, and the fourth one is that REM sleep stage. Now, to cycle through all 4 of them would be a 90-minute cycle for that first time around. And so anything prior to that will just be considered a short nap, anything 90 minutes or less. That 30-minute or that 27-minute number that you shared right now, that's when you stay in your first 2 stages of sleep. So these are more of your light sleep stages. So this is enough to get that power nap, to fight off a little bit of fatigue, rest the brain and body a little bit. This is where you get some of the little bit of that recovery in that first and second stage of sleep. So I think that's where maybe some of this information is coming from. But then let's take this information, apply it over to the firefighter. Now, for your career firefighter who's on for 24-hour shifts, is they're in or bedtime is coming around and they get in bed. And something I hear consistently is I try not to go to bed till maybe 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. because I know that one call is going to come through at 11 or 11:30. And I
Still on
don't
the
want to be
goddamn
woken up.
computer trying to do all the admin at that point, to be honest with you. I'm going to be lucky if I get to bed by then.
And that is another rabbit hole we can definitely explore from there.
Uh-huh.
But for whatever the reason is, the individual doesn't go to bed until 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. because they don't want to be woken up. So now let's say that call does come at 11:30 p.m. It's a 30-minute run. They're back to the station. They're getting ready for bed. Now, average firefighter, they stay in those light stages of sleep, N1 and N2. One, because they're anticipating that second call coming through, or they're just very light sleepers because they don't want to miss a call. They don't want to miss those tones going off. So then those 5 hours that we talked about earlier, were those 5 hours, were they cycling through those four stages of sleep? Or were they staying in that first two stages of very light sleep? So although sure they were in bed with their eyes closed, and maybe they actually dozed off, how much of it was actually recoverable sleep, where they feel well rested the next day, where they actually cycle through a full cycle of REM sleep, where they have hopefully maybe get some dreaming, some deep restorative recovery in there. How likely is that to happen on duty? And the reality is, unfortunately, it's not happening.
That's the biggest concern for me is when, especially we see in a lot of organizations in the UK, they started taking beds away or starting to be seeking to take them away. And I always think the comparison between police and EMS and paramedics that we see in the UK, like the argument that they don't have good opportunity for restorative rest in their workplace and therefore it's inappropriate or it's not fair to be applying that to firefighters. I always think of the analogy like just because my neighbor doesn't treat their kids very well, or lo and behold, unknowingly is abusing their kids in some capacity, in my opinion, doesn't mean that I should lower the way that I treat my family. And I try and extend that thought process out to the people that I work with. I'm like, there shouldn't be a race to the bottom in how we treat our staff.
So what's interesting here, and I know we may go on a quick tangent, but that race to the bottom, one of my buddies who was completing his PhD alongside me, he works more with military personnel. He's worked with paratroopers, and a big thing for them as well was sleep and recovery. So they, as a human performance staff, they get together and says, all right, how can we educate, incentivize, motivate better recovery? So they started putting whoop bands on all the members there. And they says, all right, we're going to be tracking your sleep, and the goal is to try to get 7 and 9 hours worth of sleep on the days that you can. And given they were home from deployment, they're training, so they don't have the responsibilities where you would normally get out in deployment. Now, when you put the band on all these members, they have maybe groups of 10 to 15 when he's telling me this story. He says, instead of us seeing a big improvement in sleep quality, the guys started racing to who can get the worst sleep. So it just did the complete opposite.
Okay.
And he says that's just the breed that we work with is they
Yeah.
know that sleep is good. They know that it's good for recovery. They know it's good for performance and cognitive. But now we actually started tracking it and we thought we were going to do some good and the opposite happened. So he
Mm.
says, so we got rid of them because it was not helping us. I know that's a
So
quick tangent
no,
on
no,
that,
no,
man, but
100%,
nonetheless
and I
is
love that. It makes me smile, thinking of them doing that to themselves.
but
But any
take
kind
that
of
same
competition,
experience, bring it
yeah.
over to the fire service now. Is it ever, for lack of better words, is it ever like a badge of honor where you're sitting at the fire table and it says, "Oh, those guys at ones on engine one, they got 4.5 hours of sleep. Pfft, we got 3 hours of sleep." So it almost
Mm,
becomes like a one up
yeah,
you, or in this case, like a one down you.
yeah.
So is it that culture there? And I'm speaking as an outsider, but these are conversations that people are sharing with me, that the firefighters are sharing with me, that I overhear as different crews and crowds are around me. And this is where I'm trying to really understand the culture, because without understanding the culture, there's no way you're going to implement any type of meaningful change.
There certainly is an appetite always to be the busiest crew. That is 100%. People want to move to the busier stations and stuff like that. Sometimes you see that change. as people progress through their career and start to understand the impact that it has on the outside of their world, outside of their life. But sleep is only one element of this. I was looking at some of your content again the other day. Um, that doesn't necessarily make it right up towards the top. Why do we have such a challenge with cardiovascular disease?
Oof. Well, sleep definitely plays a huge impact on that one. But let's shy away from the topic of sleep now, and let's see at some other things that are going to impact cardiovascular disease. So when we look at the risk factors for cardiovascular disease, or CVD for short, they are dyslipidemia, so high cholesterol. You have a poor metabolic profile, so high fasting glucose. You have obesity. The ACSM defines obesity by a BMI greater than 30. BMI is a metric that's meaning very little nowadays, but for the sake of this conversation, ACSM just says BMI greater than 30.
I was offered free healthcare recently, or free weight loss advice by the National Health Service in the UK because my BMI is so high, and it's not remarkably high, but obviously by their metrics, I just think body mass index is a terrible metric to be sheep dipping first responders with.
That it could be another conversation we can definitely flow down to. And I'd like to talk on that one in a bit,
Yeah,
but let's continue this train of thought
go go
on
go go. So
cardiovascular disease. All right, so cholesterol, uh, we have cholesterol, we have glucose, we have BMI, we have blood pressure, we have smoking status, family history, personal history, and there's one more that I'm missing, but nonetheless, these are all the different metrics that are going to influence your risk for cardiovascular disease. If you have two or more of any one of these metrics, then you are at a moderate to a higher risk. The more of these you have, the higher risk for cardiovascular disease. All right, so now that we know what that criteria is, how common is it for a firefighter to have, let's say, one of them, high cholesterol? We look at the everyday diet for your everyday firefighter. Let's say someone who's at a moderately busy station to a busy station, where they can't necessarily plan their lunches and dinners because tones is I don't have, or we as a crew, we don't have the time to shop, prep, cook, clean, and consume our meals regularly. So what do we do is what's something quick? Can we get something takeout real quick, something drive through? Um, and the days that we can cook something more heart healthy, do we opt out for that, or is it more of the steak and potatoes? Nothing against steak and potatoes, but nonetheless, is that you're seeing how this the the just the on-duty life of a firefighter begins to influence their overall nutritional habits. So then we have a poor diet. Let's say a poor diet to for 5, 7, 10 years. This will eventually start to trickle or start to show up as high cholesterol. You put some, you add some pounds of body fat to that, and then you start impairing your fasting glucose. So now you have two of those. You have a high fasting glucose, you have high cholesterol. Because we've been having high cholesterol, or because we have been having a poor diet that later manifested into poor cholesterol, poor glucose, now I may be trending towards the direction of a higher body fat. For the sake of this conversation, we're just saying BMI. We know body fat percentage is a better metric, but ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine, says 8 BMI. So now we start trending towards a higher body fat. So now you start seeing how all these really start, these risk factors start adding up. And this will start putting the everyday firefighter at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease.
it is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. But here's the honest truth. It takes a colossal amount of time and work to keep the podcast going. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. Now, by joining this, you'll not only support the future of the podcast, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Now, if you've ever wanted to meet a member of the podcast, buy us a beer, buy us a coffee, and you think anything you've ever listened to on the podcast has been worth £3, That's basically what we're asking you for. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
Now you put sleep deprivation back in there. Sleep deprivation, we know that there's a very strong relationship between low sleep, chronic low levels of sleep, and high blood pressure. We know that the job of firefighter is a higher stressed job. Is when those tones go off, your heart rate and your blood pressure goes higher. When you show up to scene and there's a lot of traumatic incidents there where you have to now pull out these individuals from this car accident you just saw, or this burning building, or it's a full cardiac event or full cardiac arrest, blood pressure goes up even more and it stays up even after you completed that call for a prolonged period of time. So now you start seeing how all these different metrics, cardiovascular, we have blood pressure, we have cholesterol, we have fasting glucose, and slowly we start creeping up in body weight. This doesn't happen over a 1 to 3 to 5 year span. It happens 10, 15, 20, 25 years down the road. And this is why we see in our population we work with, that those who have moderate to high levels of cardiovascular disease, they're more in their late 30s to the 40s, and for sure those in the 50s are we start seeing it a lot more.
Those in the 50s is the bit that I start to worry about, because then you realize that the thing you've been doing for 15, 20 years is you start to see that horizon no longer going away from you. It's like, no, that retirement age is coming a little bit closer, and these things are no longer tomorrow's problems. You start to feel the effects of these in the everyday, and you start having those difficult conversations with your general practitioner, with your healthcare advisor, with your family. But you kind of already locked into it by that point.
So I have a colleague, her name is Robin. She is fantastic, very intelligent individual. And she told me of this, I won't say analogy, but this way that she tells a story is we have firefighters that fall into one of three buckets here, categories. You have the early career firefighter who's on for 1 to 5, maybe 1 to 7 years, where the main thing on their mind is the gym and the job. Is they may not have a full family yet. They may be dating somebody married, but they don't have the responsibility, like the heavy responsibilities. I have three mouths to feed. So they just got on the job. They want to get really good at their operational duties. They're young, so they can recover quickly after 2 to 3 wake ups. You have all the benefits of being young. Then you're then you start transitioning more into this mid-career firefighter stage. These are anywhere between like 7 to 15, 7 to 20 years in. And this is where a lot of people mention is now I'm in the thick of it. I'm promoting, so I'm now into engineer, or I'm getting into a more of an officer role. I have a family at home. I have a wife and 3 kids. My 3 kids are under 5. I have a mortgage. So these individuals have family responsibilities at home and then more responsibilities on the job because of promotion, because they're now the senior firefighter, whatever those reasons may be. And then you start going more into the late career firefighters. To your point here is now these are the people who have less than 7 years, maybe less than 5 years left. And those issues that they heard, those health issues that they heard for the first 20 years of their career that never really applied to them, now apply to them. Now the risk of heart attack is much more serious. Now the risk of cancer is much more serious. Now you're not recovering that much quicker after that one wake up call that you have, because you're probably at a busy or at a slower station when you're into your late 40s, early 50s. So all these things become more serious. So when they come to us for more like wellness or health advice, they no longer are asking, "Hey, how do I get bigger biceps or get my squat up higher?" They no longer care about those issues there. Now they want to say, "Hey, how do I lower my risk of cancer? Hey, how do I decrease my cholesterol? Hey, how do I decrease my body fat? Because I now know this is a real thing for me." Whether they've heard it the first 20 years of their career or they have peers who are currently going through it, who are in that same age group as them, or they just recently retired and they're noticing their colleagues going through it. So it becomes a very top of mind issue for them. So when I speak to that 27-year-old firefighter compared to when I speak to that 53-year-old one, like the outcome is still going to be the same. How do we improve your nutrition? How do we improve your exercise? But the ways that we go about it, about how we actually start getting some exercise in and how we start addressing nutrition is very different. The conversation flows very differently on that end. Oh,
I've speaking to that point of exercise, like I've had loads of conversations. I've been doing stuff in the challenge community for so long. I was originally that very same, knuckle dragging, barbell bending firefighter in my early 20s, focused all around strength. And I was probably 5 stone heavier than I am now. I'm still sort of 18 and a half stone now. So I was very, very big when I first joined. But I always thought it was all around power and being able to drag 2 or 3 casualties and, be the strongest on the crew, being able to gain entry, break any door, all of that sort of jazz. I know some of the work that you've done has been taking a greater focus around VO2 max as a much, much more accurate assessment in terms of real world application for our readiness on the job. For people that are totally unfamiliar with that as a topic, because people that are maybe in the triathlon or in the high rocks world, or certainly people that do more lactic threshold world may be a little bit more familiar with it, but I don't want to make any assumptions of the listener. What's a good way for us to start grappling with this concept of VO2 max testing? Because most people maybe aren't familiar with it other than when they went through their selection tests in the UK.
all right, so VO2 max is a very deep topic to explore here. Let's take it in bite-sized pieces. What VO2 max represents is how efficient your body is with oxygen. Think about it like MPG for a car. Is your higher MPG, the more efficient you are going to be with your fuel. The same thing goes for VO2 max. The higher that value is, the more efficient your body is going to be with oxygen overall. So the NFPA here in the US, the National Fire Protection Association, they have a minimum recommendation. Some call it a standard. It's not an enforceable standard, but nonetheless, let's call it a minimum recommendation of a relative VO2 max of 42 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Now, what that number is meant to represent is if you, a firefighter, operational firefighter, who have a minimal VO2 max of that number, 42, you will have the basic levels of fitness you need to do your job safely. Safely for yourself, meaning your own heart health, and for others. Because if you go down, everybody else has to
Mhm.
now help
Yep.
you. So that's the number that has been associated with operational readiness. As we've learned over the past maybe a decade's worth of research, maybe less, is how, and this is including my own doctoral work here as well, is how VO2 max goes way beyond just operational readiness. It also looks at your how resilient you may be in terms of mental health, talking symptomology like anxiety, depression, PTSD. It looks at how quickly you can recover between calls. So this is my doctoral work. I look at HRV. Those with higher levels of VO2 max had lower levels of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and had higher recovery of HRV between 24-hour shifts compared to those with lower fitness individuals. There are some studies, this is not really conclusive, but some studies say that you do have better sleep. Again, this is not replicated. You have 1 or 2 studies saying this, and you have maybe 5 or 6 studies saying the opposite. So there is still some contention there. Uh, but nonetheless, is you see how this metric of VO2 max is not just operational readiness. It um, it 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 can describe so much more about a firefighter's career. And another one is injury. Those with higher levels of VO2 max have a much lower risk of injury. This is also off of the NFPA. They have a yearly injury report, and they report what is the most common sites of injury and the most common causes of injury. And the one that gets the number one spot for cause of injury year after year after year after year is overexertion. So that one's always in the 35 to 40% of total injuries, the cause for total injuries. Um, so
Is
now,
that a lag measure? As in, like, is it likely because people that have a higher VO2 max are likely to be doing a lot more things like interval training? It's less of a, it's more of like a causal link because that, and also when you talk about that resiliency piece, like I've done the big 300 and whatever kilo deadlifts and stuff like that, but you're really working, 10, 15 seconds, whereas you do the Miko triangle. a CrossFit box or something like that, where you're doing every minute on the minute, really intense intervals for that prolonged period of time. I wonder if also when you correlate that to injury reduction, I mean, I've had the biggest issues with my joints when I've solely been doing big, heavy compound lifts. And when I've started to introduce, I'm not talking marathons or anything like that, but I'm just talking about a more intense, intentional approach to interval cardio, even on low impact machines like rowers and skiers and all that sort of stuff. My injury reduction has gone down dramatically. So it feels like I've tightened the bolts around my joints. Whereas before, I feel like I had a lot of flat spots and weaknesses, which likely led to, I've had bulging discs in my back. I've tore my patella tendon off my right knee. I've tore my right pec off. Many injuries in the past, and recognizing that I need to take a more balanced approach with a lot more. Again, I'm not talking, 40K bike rides or anything like that, but just doing 30 minutes of intense cardio 3 or 4 times a week. I've noticed like a complete change in across my entire body, and certainly my sleep as well. That is a different level of difficulty. And again, I wonder if that is what is the sort of tangible link to the psychological element of it.
Correct. So you introduced another topic over to the question, which is muscular strength and how important that is. And we'll definitely address that one there. But to your first point, is it really causal where high VO2 max directly influences your risk of injury? And although there may be some sort of causal link there, it's more so that you have a high VO2 max. Is it because you're running marathons, or is it you're also doing a lot of strength training? You're also doing some sort of interval training. You're doing every minute on the minute. You're doing some sort of AMRAMs and whatever the style of exercise you like to do, which then translates very well over to your everyday job as a fire service. So all these different training methods that you do that inherently going to raise your VO2 max, but that also carries over to the everyday movements you do as a firefighter. You lift, you carry, you walk backwards, you throw, and you push and you pull, etc. So is VO2 max directly influencing all these metrics we talked about? Or is it because you exercise that you have a high VO2 max, that these other areas that you're also exercising also lead to a decrease of or increase in mental health resilience, also lead to a decrease in injury, also lead to a decrease in cholesterol and fasting glucose, and all these different areas that are of high concern for the firefighter? So this is why we say VO2 max is one of the major predictors for career longevity for the firefighter. Not because of just the NFPA minimum recommendation, but all the different areas that you usually have to work on in order to improve that VO2 max,
Yeah.
that then
Yeah.
are going to translate over to all the topics of concern for the firefighter.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
That's
it's like a
bridge,
behavioral
that
amplifier,
connection
isn't it?
works.
Because so many things will stem down from that. I remember speaking to one of my old colleagues a million years ago when they were talking about they were having elements of loneliness and disassociation, and they'd had gone through a breakup, and they obviously also having issues with their fitness and with their confidence. And one of the things we ended up arriving to through a very long coaching conversation was they ended up getting a dog. They'd always liked dogs when they were growing up, and it is one of those things that when you introduce it into your life, there's multitude of benefits can stem from it, because you'll always do more for someone else than you do for yourself. So it gets them up in the morning. They know the benefits of going for a walk in the morning, but just getting up and doing it for yourself is very difficult for some people. You get a dog, you want to get up there and give them that interconnectedness. They had to train it, build their confidence, all of that sort of stuff. Very, very not a fantastic analogy to be linking to it, but you know what I'm saying? The sheer fact of intentionally looking to use your VO2 max as a metric is going to have to include a lot of these other elements. So it's kind of like has that stacking effect if you just use that as a singular focus.
That was a good analogy.
I'm not
Is
sure it
it
was a
having
great
a
one
dog?
as I reflect on it now, but we'll go with
Well,
it. It's
I
in there
understood
now.
it because is it getting a dog that's going to make your quality of life better, or is everything else that surrounds your
Yeah,
life
yeah,
now with getting a dog that's going to make your life better?
yeah,
So
exactly. It's like an
that's the
if then
analogy
rule,
on
isn't
that
it?
one.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think we should be allowing things like barbells and stuff in fire station gyms? This is a very, very closed, putting people on the spot kind of question, but just because anything, the poison's in the dose, isn't it? And for me,
Absolutely.
when I was solely focused around big compound lifts and chasing the back squat PB and the big deadlift and all that sort of stuff, there is a diminishing return on investment when you focus too heavily on those things. And past a certain point, you just start to do a lot of damage to the body. And I'm not sure we as firefighters are the best sort of people to assess what's good for us in the long term, because whilst there's a lot of great culture around, banging and clanging and all that sort of stuff, um, I've seen a big transition in the UK. I'm sure you've seen it. Well, you would definitely have seen it in the US as well. Companies like Rogue and everybody like that, and the growth of the CrossFit sport hasn't solely just been around Olympic lifting and power. It's brought in sleds and a lot of functional fitness gear and a lot more kettlebell work. And I don't know if I'm just making excuses because I'm becoming an older athlete that's not as strong as he was in his 20s. But my body just, I feel like I can trust my body more. When I used to do barbell lifting all the time, I used to feel like it let me down because I would keep getting an injury or a this or a that. I'm not sold on Olympic lifting or, compound three powerlifting. I'm not sold on that being a very good long-term strategy personally.
Oh, I love this topic. So
It's very
let's
emotive for
uh,
people that are very, very in that world. And I was for a long time.
this now introduces the topic of strength. Is how important is muscular strength of a firefighter? Muscular strength is probably the top three, maybe top four predictors of injury in the firefighter. I think I have a post on this, a rather recent post on this as well. And you can
Find it. Carry on.
double check for me. It's going to be a list of one. And muscular strength is probably going to be in the number three or number four spot on this one.
Training for strength versus endurance.
That's another one I want to talk about, but keep going down. There should be in maybe the next three to four posts after that one.
I'll find it. Carry on.
Yeah, it should be a list, but nonetheless, is muscular strength is a very important quality for the firefighter. We know that actually, let me take a step back here. When we look at strength studies in the athletic population, more specifically in the contact sport population, think football, think rugby, think hockey, those that get in, athletes that get injured the least are those who have higher levels of muscular strength. When stronger athletes do get hurt, their time their time in recovery, so their time to get back on the field or on the ice, on the court, whatever their sport is much shorter compared to their weaker athletes. So we take that information, that data that we've learned from sport athletes, and now take it over to the fire service. We know that firefighters who are stronger are going to get hurt much less because their muscles, their bones, their ligaments, their tendons, they have built resilience against these levels of trauma. They can take a lot more of this punishment, this damage, and be resilient against it. Now, when this firefighter does get hurt, their time that they spend off duty recovering is much, much shorter. They can come back to the job in a shorter amount of time compared to their weaker counterparts. So that is the importance of muscular strength. But then now becomes the question is, all right, well, how do I train for muscular strength? Should I use the barbells or the kettlebells or the sandbags or anything else? So when we look at the data or just like the guiding principles on how we train for muscular strength is that we have to lift weights that are going to allow us to exert maximal level or near maximal levels of muscular contraction for a specific amount of reps. So like when it comes to the NSCA, the National Strength Conditioning Association, like their guiding principles for training for muscular strength is reps that are less than five, less than six at a percent of your one repetition maximum, roughly around 80 and above, 85 and above, somewhere around that range there. So this is when it comes to your traditional lifts. If I'm going to do a barbell deadlift, I'm going to do a barbell squat, a bench press, then I know that if I can do any certain amount of weight for 8, 10, 12, 15 reps, I'm not really optimizing muscular strength. If I pick up the weight on there and now I can do 3 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, and have 1, maybe 2 reps left in the tank, then I know that I'm prioritizing muscular strength development. So that is just the overarching principles there. But now let's put the everyday firefighter in there. How comfortable is the everyday firefighter with deadlifting a heavy weight, where they're only going to be able to do 3, 5, 6 reps with good form?
Mhm.
Same thing when it comes to the back squat, same thing when it comes to the bench press and the overhead press and all these big three power movements. Is it a great method to train strength? Absolutely. Because a firefighter is going to lunge and squat and hip hinge and push and pull and all these movements that the big three train. So, should a firefighter be doing it? If you have great form and great technique already, go for it. If you love doing this, yes. If you've been doing this since you were in your 20s and playing college ball or high school sports, and you feel very comfortable with your form, and now you're in your 40s and your back still feels good, I have no counter to it.
Okay.
But now if you're 47 and you didn't play high school sports or college sports, or you didn't weight lift growing up, and now you say, "Hey, I want to start training muscular strength. I want to test my 1 repetition maximum on the back squat." I said, "Well, let's hold up already."
Yeah.
Yes, let's
Yeah.
train muscular
That's
strength.
that's that's the
Absolutely.
problem I see with people going into CrossFit in their mid to late 40s. They're doing very complex movements at speed, and I think it's gonna be net negative if they've not got a really fantastic coach that's really slowing their accelerator on a regular basis.
So then take that CrossFit-like way of working out and
So
put
it's
it in
not
a
the worst
fire
thing in the world,
station.
it's great, but yeah, it's
Correct.
one of
Yeah, I
them.
have no contentions against
No, no, no,
CrossFit, but
yeah, yeah.
like let's just put some competitive like weightlifting where you're racing against the clock or racing against
Mhm.
your peers. You put that workout scheme within a fire station, and now I'm racing against my younger firefighter who's a junior firefighter, and I'm 42, 47 years old. You're asking to get hurt at this point here.
Yeah, yep.
Although we can use those guiding principles that we mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, is how can we apply it over to maybe a dumbbell or a kettlebell or a sled or whatever other method of exercise that we want to use or other tools that we can use for exercise. And this is where 90% of my conversations are with firefighters. Is if you're 25 years old and I know you play college ball and you tell me you're comfortable with back squatting, perfect, let's program it. If you're 45 years old and you have 3 kids at home and you're just running around with them, you don't want your low back to hurt anymore, but you still have low levels of muscular strength. All right, let's do something else. Maybe some dumbbells, kettlebells. We're still going to get you stronger, but the tools that we're going to use may not be a barbell. So I think that's where I start having those differentiations there.
Why I think in the UK, mental health took over lost time injuries or lost time issues. But for the longest of time, it was musculoskeletal lower back injuries. And I'm talking to you today with 3 bulging discs in my back, L3, L4, L5, and 2 very old end plate fractures. So I have to engage, or I choose to engage, in a lot of mobility work and a lot of blood flow work, just to try and keep me operating. And I still want to be climbing up mountains with my daughter when she's 19 and she's only 12 now. So I'm happy to give way to the younger firefighters that are punching around. You did do a little post around this recently around a lower back. You were referencing an app and some of maybe the low hanging fruit that people could maybe cling onto here, because I think it's something that's coming from most of us, in the footwear that we're provided with, the biomechanics of working with the trucks and just the nature of our jobs. I think this is coming for everyone at some point in their career. What advice would you give to the 20-year-old firefighter in terms of preventative work? And then after that, maybe shift into that 47, 50-year-old who is now waking up with a noticeable amount of pain, and having to engage, like me, in what might seem less sexy training methods to really just maintain that mobility and that range of movement.
Ooh, so I can answer this from 2 different directions.
Okay.
One is a very well informed, really knowledgeable direction because let me take a step back. Let me take a step back. is we run a wellness program, and out of this wellness program, we have a annual wellness or annual physical, if you will, where we look at flexibility, mobility, muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular efficiency, blood work, etc. So I have the profile of the individual that I'm talking to. And if I have that 27-year-old in front of me and they're saying, hey, I want to lower my risk of injury, I just want to become healthier. I have the profile in front of me and I can say, hey, you're really good at items one, two, and three, but you could improve on items five, six, and seven. So I have that to really guide my conversation with them. Let's say I didn't have that, and I'm speaking to your everyday 27-year-old firefighter who just started. Is this firefighter, they're the junior guy on the rig, so they're going to be doing a lot more of the everyday work. They're going to be doing a lot more of the heavy lifting. They're going to be doing a lot more of the carrying. So I would say if you're working out 4 days per week, two of them or three of them should be more focused on muscular strength. One or two of those should be more your aerobic, anaerobic like stuff. Because
Okay.
one, you're young, your heart is
Mhm.
healthy, you your whatever levels of fitness you currently have, they can carry you forward for another 5, 7, 10 years. But muscular strength, this is something you're going to need right now because you're probably going to be the one going into that second floor or third floor. You're probably going to be the one that's going to be crouching and crawling. You're probably going to be the one doing the heavier the lifting, if you will. Double down on muscular strength. Now, the same question now I'm speaking to that 47-year-old, that 53-year-old. If I don't have a profile in front of me, I know that the main concerns for that 53-year-old is heart health, it's blood pressure, it's cholesterol. I'd say, hey, for you, let's just focus overall. Let's double down on your VO2 max. Let's do a lot more cardiovascular like work, whether that's your moderate intensity zone two training, where if you have the appetite for it, let's push it to higher intensity zones of 75, 80% of your max heart rate, and that becomes a conversation from there. That's assuming I don't have a profile in front of me where I can say, hey, individual, looks like you're really good at these, but you're not good at these. So that'd be my overall advice to the everyday 27-year-old or everyday 53-year-old is depending what part of your career is, I know what the most common injuries are or the most common topics of concern are for that age group. Here's how we can address it.
MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. That's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake. I don't recall ever specifically being given any advice in my fitness journey as a first responder around mobility, around flexibility. I think it's always assumed when you're young, because you're full of rubber and bouncy plastic and enthusiasm and all of that testosterone. But I do see it as like an unspoken thing when you just see the general movement and biomechanics of firefighters of different generations on the fireground. But I don't think unless they've, met a partner that's engaging in yoga or something like that, it's not something I really see encouraged across the fire and rescue service. Is there any kind of mobility guidance that you give to people? Because I often think of it like a map. Like if you don't continually explore that map, areas of it will go gray. And then whenever you do need to go there in an emergency situation, your child drops something off the side or you need to lunge for something, that's when that pop happens. But what kind of advice and guidance would you give people around those elements?
So this is a topic that I've been currently wrestling with. I don't know how to explain it really intelligently as of yet. So I say something wrong
I don't
in
know
the
how to
next
give
two to
anything
three
intelligently.
years.
Hit me with the bromance. Bro science will do.
In the next 2 to 3 years, if I have to correct something I say right now, then I'll do that. All right. So what we are learning right now, actually, let me take a step back. There was there was a research study got published, let's say 10 years ago. It was using the FMS, the functional movement screen, to predict injury in the everyday firefighter. And this functional movement screen is 7 different movements where you just go through like an everyday movement, like a lunge or an overhead squat, or this back scratch like test to see how well you move through all these different movement patterns. And then they give you a 1 through 3 rating. You can get a 0 if you have pain, but assuming you have no pain on any of these movements, you get a 1 through 3. And the lower your score is, like your composite score, the lower your score is, the higher your risk of injury. So this study published concluded that those firefighters who have a score of 14 and under on the FMS test, their risk for injury over the next 5 to 7 years, I forget what the time span is their risk of injury is much higher. So then this creates the thought that, oh, okay, mobility is important because
Mhm,
here's a study here.
mhm,
But then we take that and we compare that to other studies where it's looking at, well, how important is flexibility really? Is low levels of flexibility, average levels, or high levels of flexibility, how important is just that number alone for injury prevention? And you have studies concluding the opposite. Flexibility is
mhm.
really not that important. Mobility
Because
really
even the
isn't that
world of
important.
stretching in high level athletes is still debated today, isn't it? Should it be static? Should it be explosive? Should it be no stretching at all? Do you use that? Do you lose that tensile strength and explosiveness in the muscle? I think the jury is still out globally on this. I've not really seen any hard and fast rulings.
So this is where like the world of stretching research is, you become to splitting hairs. Now you're looking at stretching for athletic performance. It's no longer stretching for injury prevention. So that is where we can really differentiate those paths there. But if we stay on this topic for mobility, flexibility for injury prevention, if I have, and this is where I'm leaning towards right now in terms of my conclusion on flexibility and mobility, and I may be wrong, so I may have to correct myself in the next 3 to 5 years, is if you have average levels of flexibility, mobility, and we'll define what average is right now, but if you have average levels of that, then adding more or dedicating some time of your workout program to just specific mobility flexibility training may not have that return on investment that you're looking for. So let me explain. Is all right, I let's say I can only squat a couple centimeters. You guys are UK. A little couple. I can't break parallel when I'm squatting. I was gonna say a couple inches before, but you guys are on the different metric system. But
Metric,
nonetheless,
we'll have it.
yeah. But nonetheless, is let's say I can't reach parallel when I'm squatting. Does that mean I have to stretch out my hamstrings a lot more, my glutes, my low back, what all these different muscles that allow me to get into a lower squat? So now I'm going to dedicate 20 minutes well, whatever time I have allowable for me to work out to just stretching hamstrings, glutes, low back, etc. Is that going to help me maintain permanent changes in my overall functionality? I'm leaning towards no. Again, this is assuming we have someone with just average levels of fitness or average levels of flexibility and mobility. What is a superior way? Well, maybe and this is what I'm thinking right now, is if we get a light barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, body weight, if you will, and just start working on getting lower and lower on that squat or that lunge for this specific movement. So right now I can only get a couple centimeters above parallel, but next week I'm going to try to get a little bit lower. And next week at that same weight that I've been using, I'm going to try to get a little bit lower. And now I'm building strength through a larger range of motion. So because I have a weight on my back or on my hands or whatever that I'm carrying, whatever tool of weight that I'm carrying, now I'm forcing myself to go through a larger range of motion. Is that now I'm checking off the box for strength training, weight training, and I'm also forcing my joints, my tendons, my ligaments, my muscles to expand and increase my range of motion. So, can this be a superior method for improving overall functionality at the joint? And my theory right now is yes, absolutely. Let's add a caveat to this though. But now I have a firefighter who has poor levels of flexibility. They don't move well, their hips, they they can barely get into a quarter squat before they start getting any low back pain or some impingement at the hip already. Then I would say, all right, let's focus a lot more on just mobility work. What you would notice with the typical exercise you would see at your physical therapy rehab clinic is you have low back pain, all right, let's do some glute stretches, let's do some hip flexor stretches, let's do some hamstring stretches,
Mhm.
more of those type of exercises you would see there. But that's the differentiation there is where is your current flexibility mobility at? Do you fall within the norm? If so, let's do traditional weight training and we'll build range of motion through these different exercises that we're doing. Or do you already have poor levels, low levels of mobility, flexibility? In that case, let's focus more on the traditional PT physical therapy like exercises. That I think that's my answer right now on that one.
It's a comprehensive one, and it's something I keep flip-flopping between as I wrestle through, because sometimes it gets better, and I'm not entirely sure why it's getting any better, which is what's frustrating. Do you know what I mean? But I think if you're trying everything, it's hard to. I always say you can't split test life. So me doing something a year ago, 2 years ago, when my mind, when my body, when my stress levels were in an entirely different place, is very difficult then to replicate in the future. That's why I always try and pull one or two useful nuggets when I'm speaking with subject matter experts such as yourself. One of the ones that kind of, again, you can't really detach these because they're so interconnected. And when we talk about all cause mortality and the highest rates of death around first responders and certainly firefighters, suicide seems to keep cropping up. I mean, I think it's at the 2 or 3, when I was seeing some of your recent content. I was reading something this afternoon where I think it's like 40 to 45% of firefighters have had that suicidal ideation. They have considered that at some point in their time. And I think it was like 15% have even attempted it. We've had 4 that I can think of in services close to me here in the UK just in this year alone. Um, from your conversations, from your studies, from anything that you're interacting with, what do you think starts people on this? I heard it described before as a path towards suicide. People start to have those considerations and those thoughts. Is there any behaviors? Is there any interventions? Is there any focuses around their holistic health and well-being that we can try and look towards to act as a way to punch the brakes or bring people back from these things?
So this is a topic that I certainly am not an expert on.
Mm,
So I'm going to be repeating a lot of the research that I read, but I have
mhm.
colleagues. One who's almost done with his PhD is a colleague of mine named Tomas Rubacalba. His main focus is mental health in the firefighter. And we have done some good work with someone we brought on almost like a consultant. Her name is Dr. Brooke Barlett. She's also gaining a lot of popularity online as well. But nonetheless, these are things that I'm learning from them. So I'm going to repeat here is why do we have a high, why are we noticing an increase in mental health in the fire service? Um, and I've been working with firefighters for about a decade now. So I'm pulling from conversations that I've had with older individuals is mental health was still a thing back then, but we just never really talked about it. Um, what something I commonly hear is, let's say this older individual now, I think these guys are like 40, in their late 40s, early 50s. They said mental health back then, when they were their junior firefighter on the rig, is after this traumatic call that they were just on, the captain would look over the shoulder, look in the back of the cab and say, "You guys are good," and everyone would just kind of shake their head, and that's it. So there was no addressment of it. It wasn't a topic conversation. So are the rates of mental health increasing or have they always been high, but now we're just noticing it because it's now in the limelight? I'm going to assume that the latter is the answer to this
I
one.
would absolutely agree.
But
I think people have
nonetheless,
just suffered in silence historically, and they've just slowly excluded themselves from society. I think we just didn't notice it as much before because we weren't so interconnected. When people cry out for help now, sometimes it's in a virtual capacity. So, and we're more aware of things. I think sometimes that's why we think the world is more dangerous as well, because it's so in front of us. But the net benefit of that, hopefully, if we leverage it appropriately, is that we can see these people in crisis and hopefully have some form of intervention. Much for sorry for interrupting you, but like, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I think it's probably always been terrible. And equally, it does correlate to society. Society, we're seeing a lot more mental health awareness, but noticeably in the first responder and firefighter sector, it is significantly worse. The data tells us there is a higher prevalence of it in here.
So correct. And then as we continue exploring this, to say, all right, well, what about the job of a firefighter puts them at a higher risk for mental health, including suicide? So then, if we just talk about on duty life, let's take off duty life challenges out of this conversation. And the number one thing that's going to be influencing rates of anxiety and depression is sleep deprivation. We know that we know that some telltale signs that we can measure on the everyday is going to be heart rate, HRV. And these are usually signs of anxiety. Not always, but a, a good chunk of it can communicate some symptoms of anxiety on this one. So the average firefighter who's going to be sleep deprived, they have higher levels of heart rate, lower levels of HRV. Heart rate variability, it's a measure of like stress and recovery. Um, so we know that chronic sleep deprivation is having some sort of impact on our autonomic nervous system. They're just not recovering as well. We know that the firefighter on duty, they have to be alert. They have to be ready to go as soon as those tones go off. So that alone right there, that just puts them at a heightened state of alertness. That is analogous to now anxiety, but it's not anxiety the way we see it in the general population. Now this is this tactical anxiety, if you will, operational anxiety, where they have to be ready for that next call that come in. Um, so then now layer in the stuff that the firefighters they witness on an everyday is the things that the guys share with me. And sometimes when they're sharing this stuff with me, like my stomach just rumbles because it sucks. Like I don't like to listen to
You
the
see the
stories, but it's
worst
the
elements
reality.
of society that are often hidden to most members of the public. We go into homes where socioeconomically these people are just really struggling. They've been forgotten by society. And I always say the future's here, but it's not evenly distributed. Like we see people, that's the reason they're calling 999 or someone's called it on their behalf in the UK because they are struggling. They are struggling. And it's the whole like Matthew principle. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. These people don't have the skill sets, the education, the access to funds to improve this. It's a self-perpetuating negative spiral. And we interact with that on a daily basis.
And to add to that, and it's also now they respond to a pediatric call and it's a 3-year-old drowning, and that firefighter who's on the call has a 3-year-old at home. So there's a lot of that as well that they share with me. Or they're on a full cardiac arrest, and the family is watching them as they're working on their dad, giving CPR, and the dad doesn't make it. It's like all these things, it's rumination, it sticks with them. And now add another layer on top of that is the lack of, let's say, control. Is I know I'm going to go home tonight or tomorrow morning because it's my son's birthday and I have a 4-day off. But now I got forced overtime. Is I got to stay. You call the wife and say, hey, wife, son, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to be there because I got to work. So
That
then,
that cognitive dichotomy, I heard a military guest we had on a number of years ago when we were talking about mental health and trauma, and he was like, I think it's way worse for first responders because when you're on deployment, and again, I have the utmost respect for all of our men and women serving for us, but they live in it. It's horrific for some that experience it, and it's a very immersive experience. And then they come back and they try and reintroduce to society. But for a first responder, that cognitive switch, it's a massive spectrum and it happens on a daily basis. Certainly I was an on-call firefighter. You'd think of them as voluntary firefighters in the US. Like I would go and do something. I wouldn't be on shift all day. I'd go for an hour and a half to a fatal road traffic collision. And then I'd come straight back home because I've got to pick my daughter up from swimming because my wife's got to go to work. And I'm straight back into, I've got to make tea. I've got to iron the uniform. I've got to sort the dogs out. And that was one of the things I struggled with the most. I felt like it was easier sometimes in my full-time role because I knew it was at least a 12-hour block and I was there and I could at least get into some form of a rhythm. Whereas people that operate as a voluntary service sometimes, I almost fear for them the most because it is so mentally flip-flopping. I want to take a minute to just tell you about something that I think you're going to be really interested in. Next September, firefighters from across the UK and Ireland will be traveling to Atlanta, Georgia for something truly special. It's the United for 9/11. It's the Memorial Stair Climb. Now, this isn't just any event, it's a once-in-a-generation tribute where 343 firefighters, one for every FDNY firefighter who gave their life on September 11th, will climb 110 floors in their honor. It's about more than just a physical challenge. It's about remembering sacrifice, pushing ourselves, and standing shoulder to shoulder across services and across nations. It's a chance to honor the legacy of 9/11, to pay tribute to our fallen firefighters, and to test your mental and physical strength, and to raise an awareness around mental health and resilience in the fire service. Whether you take part in this climb or not, support from home, or simply help spread the word, you can be part of it. This is about unity, remembrance, and respect. So if you want to learn more, head over to www.memorialstairclimb.co.uk or on Instagram, check out united_911climb. This is going to be something powerful. I hope you can make it. I hope you can support it. Now back to the show.
Perfectly explained on that is these individuals, they go from just seeing some bad human trauma and they get off shift and now they're going to be a husband and now they have to be a father. So how quickly can they turn off that switch there? For some can do it, some others can't, or just
And it
don't do it well.
leaks. It leaks over because you have to, as best you can, reduce empathy almost in a sociopathic way to as a survival mechanism to detach from the things you see at work. But that empathy fatigue can bleed over and you can seem cold, as has been put to me many times. When you, I always say the worst day you've had is the worst day you've had, and that's where your spectrum begins. But if your version of a worst day is seeing an infant lose their life in a road traffic collision, was the one for me probably 15, 16 years ago. And then you're trying to relate to your partner who has not got the promotion today, or your daughter didn't get the part in the play, and you just do not react. You just can't seem to calculate why the fuck this is even important. And that I hate seeing that in myself, because I almost have an out of body experience when I observe that lack of empathy in myself. And then I don't want to fake it because I shouldn't have to, but it doesn't come naturally to me. And I'm not special by any means. I'm just a representation of, I'm sure, many people listening, but I find that really, really, really difficult. And I worry if it's going to get worse.
So then that is the life of a firefighter, right? We over the past 3 minutes we summarized that of all these different
Sorry, I
things
made it a
that
little bit
lead.
personal there.
You're right. But this is the life of a firefighter. Over the past maybe couple minutes, we have summarized what are all the different things contributing over to the mental
Yeah.
health crisis in the fire service. So what's is it going to get worse? And if it is, what's going to make it worse? And one of my beliefs on this one, this is again including my doctoral work, is how call volume has a very strong relationship over to the symptomology of mental health, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And as call volume starts to go up, where you were used to running, I don't know, 10 calls per shift, now in 10 years, you're running 15 calls per shift. But out of those 15, you're getting one or two more wake ups. Out of those, out of the increase in call volume, possibly your membership has gone down, and now you are backfilling for that one vacant spot. So you're working more days, so more time away from family, and while you're working, you're getting one, your workload is going up and your sleep is going down. So you're putting all this into this perfect storm scenario and taking this firefighter who now has to work until they're 57 or older, and you see how it becomes this snowball effect of time away from family, less sleep, more traumatic events, more call volume, poor nutrition, less exercise, and I'm getting older now, and the whole thing starts to really compound in itself. So what do we do? That's that's the one where everyone's just kind of shrugging your shoulders like shit. what do we do?
Well, that's the thing because indecision is acceptable because people will just keep coming to work. We have to keep coming to work based on hope and faith. And I'm not trying to catastrophize here. And also, I've just glanced at the time. I want to be respectful of the time. So what I want to try and do is let's try and summarize and go in two different directions. So one thing I want to close with is I want to bring something back into our sphere of control, and I want to talk about wearable tech. So if I've heard some of this, if this has been the sort of straw that's broke the camel's back, and this has got me over that tipping point of taking some action, I want to discuss a few things within our sphere of control that maybe people could tactically go away and look at today. And then the other side is I know we have a lot of senior leadership team that sometimes listen in the UK because we have a lot of senior leaders on and they want to listen to each other. What advice would you give to them, given the financial challenges that they are facing? What are potentially some low hanging fruit that they might be able to give more consideration to for their staff? So outside the firefighter sphere of control, senior leadership, organizational, where should I invest my time for the lot? Because if firefighters leave, I've got to train more. It's not cost effective. And then inside my sphere of control as a frontline operator, what could I do to personally invest in, whether it be wearable tech, whether it be behavior, whether it be nutrition? Again, Pete Wakefield's 27 questions in two categories.
This is where I don't feel like I have a good intelligent answer on, but I'm going to take a stab at it.
God damn it,
Uh,
Dan.
yeah, I've thought about this a lot too, and the more that I put my thoughts out on paper and I look at them, I'm like, well, shit, how likely is this to work?
Yeah,
So
I
we
know.
look at what's currently being done. We have peer support programs where if I'm having some trouble, I'm going to reach out to you, say, hey, Pete, I'm having trouble. This last call really fucked me up. How well does that work? And we know it has some level of efficacy to it, but how likely is that to work on a large scale? And that's a whole different conversation on that one.
Yeah.
The other one is I'm working a lot of overtime, and I have 3 kids under 5, but there's 3 vacant spots or 7 vacant spots. So that's now something way out of
I
my
need the money.
control. Is yeah, we just need one, we need the money, but two, we need the applicants coming through. And if we're now in a world where applications are at a much lower rate, and
It's
now
never been this difficult in 30 years. And the problem now is so many people are retiring as well. So it's getting even worse. We're not getting them through the door. And that's kind of what the podcast is all about, really, is trying to be an advertisement for the good elements of the job. But sometimes I find elements like this hard to sell it because it's a challenge.
so then that's the other one is all right, let's get some more bodies, let's get some more trained people in here, qualified people that we can then train. And that's another heavy lift on the department end as well. So then we all start kind of pointing fingers as well, the chief has to, the department has to, my crew has to, my captain has to, is well, what can I do?
Yeah.
And
How do we point more thumbs and less fingers? What can I do selfishly to try and look after myself? Because also when I leave the fire service, they're not going to care. I mean, my friends and colleagues might care, but my family are the ones that I want to be here for.
and this is and I didn't mean it to be this way, but this is a good segment over to the wearable tech stuff. Is
Hmm.
one is, hey, let's get screened for this. What is my current risk of having anxiety, depression, PTSD symptomology? And there's validated screening tools for this. And you dedicate 15 minutes, 30 minutes of going through some of these surveys, and you say, is like, oh shit, I do have a lot of symptoms of anxiety. I do have a lot of symptoms of PTSD. What now? Do I look for in-house resources, like whatever my fire department offers, or do I start looking for some outside resources? And then you can make an educated decision on that one. That's step number one. That's one of the steps. The other one is get to know yourself really well by your own wearable tech. So wearable tech came out, let's say 15 years ago. With I think the Fitbit was like the first mover in this space here. And now, let's say 15 years later, this tech has matured a lot and it's going to continue to mature. So this technology knows us so well. It knows us on average what my bedtime is, what my wake up time is. It knows what my resting heart rate is. It knows what my nocturnal resting heart rate is. It knows what my breath rate is. It knows all these different, very intimate details of my own physiology. So as we start learning what my baseline for heart rate, for sleep, for HRV, for breath rate, for all these different things are, and I start to see it's like, oh shit, my HRV is much lower than it normally is.
Hmm.
Oh damn, my breath rate is much higher than it normally is. Breath rate, high breath rate, low HRV, these are one symptomology of just poor recovery. But if you're a firefighter, it can probably mean that you have higher levels of anxiety as well, or just anxious-like symptoms as well. You're not recovered well. So now you pair those together. My screening tool that I took earlier said I have high levels, I may have be a high risk for anxiety, and my physiological metrics on my watch or whatever wearable you like to use are saying that I'm out of.
You were just saying about all those colliding factors. I genuinely feel like I'm in that little bit of a sweet spot today. Total transparency for people. I was late coming on our recording today. As people may hear a difference in my voice, I've just come off 2 days of hosting a big firefighter challenge thing. So that anxiety was climbing, that sleep has not been optimum. And then I felt all of that inbound of today. And then I came on late for this, and I was right in that sweet spot where, I'm like, I just start hating on myself, and I'm like, I'm underslept and everything like that. But you also have those values of wanting to show up as a professional and commitment to the cause and all of those elements. And I would have thought to myself, there's a tremendous hypocrisy in me wrestling with this stuff and then losing an opportunity to speak with a subject matter expert on the fact. There would have been a real hypocrisy to that. But you're right. All of these elements, as they compound on themselves, make it very difficult to know where to start. It's almost like you're falling through the rapids of all of these challenges, and you need to just find something firm to grab onto to be able to just kind of find some footing.
Yeah, so this is why this is the mental health is such a heavy lift because it's not just going to be
Hmm.
one solution to this. It's going to be a I guess compilation of
A
solutions
cocktail,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, it's get screened for it, track yourself on a regular basis, uh, get help, whether it's in department resources or external resources. The
Do you
one
have a preference for tracking?
um, tracking your like your wearables, I mean your
Body one,
physiological
yeah.
metrics.
Your wearables.
There is different brands that I'm kind of seesawing between. One, I like the Whoop band for certain reasons. I like the Garmin line of models for another
I'm
reason.
Garmin now. I was Whoop for a long time. I didn't like the fact that it didn't. I don't want my messages and stuff coming up on wrist. I don't put that stuff on with my Garmin. But Garmin, it 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 does offer a much wider array of stuff, but depends on your level of distractibility and things like that as well. Some other smart devices, you have to charge them too often as well. Whereas this thing lasts like 25 days. I think I'm in Garmin camp now. Whoop have been good to me for a long time, but I think I'm Garmin.
Yeah, so I get that question all the time. Is all right, you're like they tell me, all right, you're a fan of wearables, which one should I get? And I have to go through like this list of things as well. What do you prefer? Do you care about battery
Yeah,
life? If so, don't do these. Do you care
yeah.
about how robust the product is? If so, don't go Apple because it's gonna break. Um,
I don't know.
maybe the newer Apples are gotten much better.
I think you're paying for the brand, and it's a bit of a walled garden. Anyway, I'm not going to hit on Apple, but it's not my thing.
Then it's if you do a lot of wildland stuff, if you guys go on strike team a lot, then how important is long and lat to you? Then if the answer is yes, then go Garmin. If you
Stuff
hate to
long
have,
lat, the sunrise sunset it's great. I'm big sold on it. I've been on it for about a year now. I'm full Garmin camp.
yeah,
they're
so
not
there's
they're not
all
they're not
these
sponsoring us. I don't
questions.
think they ever would. I can't see why they would sponsor us, but I just like the device.
I'm currently reaching out to them to say, hey, let's do something together here. Is we know I
Yeah.
know that you have a product that's going to be worthwhile for the firefighter. It's just
Hmm.
about education from there. But nonetheless, that's besides the
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
So all these different brands, like there's going to be pros and cons to each one. But then the main question still isn't answered is, well, which one is the most accurate? Is because it can all do sleep, they can all do heart rate, they can all do breath rate, they can all do all these different things. But which one is the most accurate? So this is where we start going down. Now this is where it may start contradicting some of the other lists that we just mentioned, like Apple. Apple's great for sleep, but if you have one of the older models, then when you bang it against the kitchen table or against a rig, your screen might break. But it's great for sleep. It has very good accuracy for it. The Whoop Band also great for sleep. Um, But then if you're into having your all your messages and
Yeah.
having a screen on there, you don't have access to that.
I just use it for a timer and stuff like that for my intervals and things like that. I used to just be digital all the time before then, and I still need to have that. It helps me with my workouts. It's not, I don't want messages on it, but I want those old school aspects of a watch still.
Yeah, so then the other one is fuck, I forgot what I was going to say, but nonetheless, is you kind of get the point on this one is how accurate is heart rate? So then let's say you're on the Garmin camp, and unfortunately, heart rate has gotten better with Garmin's, especially when you have a
I use
chest
a
strap.
MyZone. Yeah, I use a MyZone chest strap when I'm doing that specific stuff. I outsource that all to the app on the phone with MyZone because
Perfect.
yeah, I agree they're not perfect.
Because now you have, let's say you have a regular Garmin, a mid-tier model, and as you start getting sweaty and your wrist starts going, or your watch starts going up and down on your wrist, you start getting a lot of noise, inaccuracies when it comes to heart rate, and then the wearable means nothing at that point. So then if you're going to go Garmin, go with a chest strap on this one to get better heart rate readings, especially when you're working out. So then that's how I answer the question for the individuals who ask me which brand should I get, what model should I be getting. It's going to be depending on what you're really looking to get from your wearable. Um, but the
No, I promised
topic,
that'd be the last two, but I want to ask you about blood tests quickly. Sorry. I know we're time time. I know we're time. Blood
we're still good.
tests. There's been a lot of movement in the UK around cancer screening and blood tests. As someone who's getting a little bit older, I'm very interested in my hormone profiles. I've had 3 blood tests over the last 2 years because there's a lot of things that will start showing up at my age. There's lots of difficulties, lots of things go off in tangents that may also affect personal life. Erectile dysfunction is a big thing affecting males in their 40s and 50s, some younger. I also have concern for our female population and the effects it has on their ability to have children. Um, we've started seeing some more blood testing in the UK. The hormone conversation is becoming more of a popular one. Do you advise blood testing? If so, should we get it the panel done by where should I be going with this information? Because information can be a dangerous thing if you then go off and just buy 50 supplements that don't do anything.
Ooh, blood test one. So let's go perfect world scenario. Is in a perfect world, you would get your blood test done twice per year, every 6 months. So that way you can see is how well your lifestyle over the past 6 months have influenced your overall cholesterol profile, your metabolic profile, your testosterone profile, et cetera, et cetera. One of my lights just went off.
It's okay.
But nonetheless, is if in a perfect world scenario, get just your common lipid and metabolic profile, and then now your testosterone profile every 6 months. Because now you can start making more calculated moves in terms of your diet, your exercise, and your supplement regimen if you so wish. Let's get some examples here. Um, and I know I'm gonna talk on some controversial topics here. I started doing, I don't know, intermittent fasting, or I started doing the carnivore diet because it's got really popular online. And then my LDL, I've always had healthy LDL. I started doing carnivore. Now my LDL cholesterol, my LDL-C has crept up. However, I've always had really healthy cholesterol, and now my LDL-C has gone up, and my triglycerides have gone up. What should I do? What should I do? That becomes a question from there. And I
Thing
know
is, the
we're gonna
carnivore
go.
diet, I've found some massive cognitive benefits with that, like lowering my sugars, trying to move more to, just less carbs, less sugars. But again, like I said before, you can't split test life. Is this just an aging thing? You can never, hammer a stake in the ground and go, well, that's true because of this. You're like, well, that was 2 years ago. I'm a different age, and it's so hard to get some definitive directions for me.
But nonetheless, and I'm not here to demonize carnivore. There's a
No, no, no.
long
Yeah.
list of positives for it, and
Mhm.
also a long list of negatives for it. But nonetheless, if you're 27 years old, you've always had healthy cholesterol, and then your LDL-C has gone up. How bad is that really? Are you getting a lot more of the cognitive benefits from your current diet? Um, then we start going down that path there. But if you're 47 years old and you've had 10 years of high LDL-C or LDL cholesterol, then I would say, hey, let's take it back on your saturated fats. Uh, because you already have a long history of poor cholesterol, and you're just going to increase it even more doing this diet here. So this that way of you're getting your blood work done every 6 months or so, you're keeping a tighter pulse on how your wellness is really trending. And now on top of that, the everyday life of a firefighter, we know that sleep deprivation, as we talked for the past 60 minutes, influences it. Huge influence on your cortisol and your testosterone profile. So if you are lifting the weights, you're eating the high protein diet, you're doing your best to get your best sleep possible, and your testosterone is low, this is where it opens up that conversation of, well, how how willingly am I to explore some sort of exogenous therapy? Now, there's plenty of other ways that you can start boosting your testosterone naturally without exogenous intervention. But because this is a common question that I get, is let's discuss it. There's a list of pros and a list of negatives to this when it comes to some sort of testosterone replacement therapy or exogenous testosterone therapy. And for the
Very, very popular in the States, and we're seeing more of
extremely
it
popular.
become legalized and popular in the UK. People struggle with it because of its close association with what they see as a performance enhancing drug and steroids, and they have it closely associated with the bodybuilding world and things like this. I don't think you're comparing apples with apples there. Hormone replacement therapy for women has been commonplace for what, 40 years at least, and there's no stigma attached to that in the same way there is for men. And I think as we expect men to continue working into their 50s and 60s, I think it becomes a more intelligent decision. It's definitely something I'm going to explore in the next 10 years. I'll say that publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. We have one department that I can think of that says no to testosterone replacement therapy. The reasons I don't know. How do they enforce it? I don't know that neither. But
Hmm.
nonetheless, is this, I believe it's gonna, and I'm not endorsing it, I'm not encouraging, I'm not
No, no,
recommending
no.
for any firefighter to do this, but nonetheless, is become educated on it. If you're gonna jump on the therapy, you're jumping on it because you know the long list of benefits to it. You should also be aware of the long list of negatives to it. So there is a safe way to do it. It's not completely safe where the risk of negatives is zero, but there's a safer way to doing it.
Well, I would
So
say there's no solutions, only trade-offs. Everything you're doing now, everything you everything you're eating, is what we said earlier, the poison's in the dose. You know what I mean? Everything's going to be giving you cancer in some capacity or another. You just don't really, unless you're taking blood work, you don't really know what the trade off is anyway. So you're probably being led by just some myth and somebody else's idea and somebody else's interpretation. You haven't got the data to support your decision.
and this is where that periodic blood work would really come in. Is, let's say your testosterone did show up low, and your free test, I mean your total test is in the, I don't know, low 300s, which is still considered normal, but you're on the low end of normal. And you are doing your best to sleep well. You're exercising 4 days per week. You have a high protein diet, and you keep a rather lean body fat. Let's say you're at, I don't know, 18% body fat. Um, so then should I jump on the therapy? I know that I'm going to have better sleep, better recovery, easier time to put on muscle, easier ability to lose fat, and all these different pros there. Am I okay with possibly getting some body hair? Am I okay with possibly getting some body acne? Am I okay with possibly losing hair on my head? Am I okay with getting gynecomastia, high blood pressure, high cholesterol? And the list kind of goes on here. This is not to say that if you jump on the therapy, you will get any of these. If you jump on the therapy and you stay within these normal physiological ranges for testosterone, there's a low chance that you're going to experience any of the negatives. If you start abusing, not abusing, but if you start using this therapy to get into now super physiological levels,
That's the slippery
then was
mission
where we can
creep.
start seeing the increase in risk here.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
what I'm worried about because I used performance enhancing drugs when I was younger, and that's the one thing that scares me is once you've been Superman, who wants to be Clark Kent again? Do you know what I mean? Once you start to see the benefits, men are terrible at taking over the prescribed dose on anything, whether that be your alcohol or your bloody food intake or even your paracetamol, fucking anything. We just think the guidelines are for other people.
yeah, well, the common saying is if a little is good, then a lot must be better. And
Exactly.
and
Go big or go home, baby.
it's the same thing here. Is if I feel great, if I went my total testosterone went from 350, And total testosterone is not the only metric we look at. It's total testosterone, free testosterone, the sex hormone binding globulin, and the list goes on. But nonetheless, is if I can get my total and therefore my free testosterone to really bump up from 350 to now, I don't know, 750, 850, and I feel so much better, what if I bump it up a little bit more? What if I
Hmm.
start going into the maybe 1,000, 1,200, and then that becomes a slippery slope from there? Um, but nonetheless, I would love to jump on another episode with you so we can
I
really
know.
go
I'm
down
sorry.
into a lot of the
I want to
steps.
go. We'll wrap it up, dude. The more we've continued to talk, the more my mind has switched back on, and I really enjoyed our conversations there. I want to be respectful of your time. Please send my love to all of the family. We'll put some notes below. We have touched the surface on a million topics. Please go and explore Dan's work in greater detail. Dan, thank you so much for your time, brother. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch up with you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, live with intention, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.